What is up, Fightful Faithful? Welcome back to another interview here on Fightful Overbooked. Ahead of Super Strong Style 16 this weekend, we have the man who will be challenging Kid Lykos for the Progress World Championship this on Sunday, Mr. Mark Haskins. How are you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. And we're going to get straight into Super Strong Style then. This weekend, big world title match. A lot of tension going into it between you and Lykos. And I did interview Lykos earlier in the week, and he did say that he does feel like you are getting a little revisionist with your history regarding last year's Super Strong Style tournament final with Nigel getting involved. So I'm just wondering what your response is to that.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to sit through a Kid Lykos interview. I can think of no worse way to spend my time. But I did see that the headline that he said that I like to revise history. And I really have to ask the question, like, is Kid Lykos completely delusional? Because there is no denying in that match. Yeah, I got frustrated with Nigel McGuinness. I felt like he was being a little bit disrespectful towards me. I thought he might have been counting a little bit slow. And I had words with him. And obviously, I've never been to the finals of a Super Strong Style 16 tournament. So it was, maybe I just let the pressure get to me. But I had words with Nigel. It did not end well. It got a little bit physical. And then I grabbed Lykos. I was going to give him the brainbuster, his own finishing move. And Nigel McGuinness came over, he grabbed me, he pulled me out, and then he threw me back to Lykos, and Lykos hit a move on me. And then, I managed to kick out of that, but then Lykos comes off the top and hits me with something else. And at this point, it was enough to keep me down. So for Kid Lykos to say that, I'm, crazy about how things went down, like, no, it's pretty damn clear. Nigel McGuinness got involved, it changed the momentum of the match, and it allowed Kid Lykos to win.
And a year on, do you think that's the biggest difference going into this match? No Nigel this time around. It's just you and Lykos. Obviously, Vicky's going to be there, but other than that, just you two one-on-one.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, like if it wasn't for Nigel McGuinness, then the match would have gone in a completely different direction. But he was there. This year, he's not there. So if, Kid Lykos is the man that he likes to think he is, at least, then, he'll be able to prove that he doesn't need Nigel McGuinness to beat me.
Of course. And it is a very big world title match in the sense that it is carrying into the next era of Progress. And Lykos did mention that he does feel that he is going to be leading that charge. What is your answer to that and his response that he is planning on running through you to make that happen?
First of all, Kid Lykos would never run through me, right? If you locked he and I in a room together, I'm the only man walking out alive. So for him to say that he would run through me, he is even more delusional than I already thought he was. Right now, in terms of things going forward, I can't deny that there is always a risk, particularly in wrestling, because all it takes is 3 seconds for a match to end, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's standard. So there is always a risk that somebody like Kid Lykos could beat an absolute legend like Mark Haskins. But the thing I would say is this, right, is that before I've got cocky and I've got ahead of myself, I'm very much aware of that. I have learned from, the lessons that God has taught me. I have learned from, the problems, the things that I have screwed up on in the past. And I am a person who learns from these things, learns from these failures, and I always come back stronger. We are a year on. And, Kid Lykos has gone from being a number 1 contender to the Progress Wrestling champion. Congratulations for him. And what kind of favor has that done for the company? Seemingly nothing. Do you know what I mean? Back in the day, as they like to say, back in my generation, which was only a few years ago, right? Guys like myself were killing it. We were out there. We were the most ambitious people on the scene. And it showed because shows were being sold out up and down the country. That same level of fanfare isn't still here. It's still not the same with this next generation. And I think that it's real easy to see. It's because this generation is an absolute generation of wet wipes. And it really, really boils my piss that they think that what they're doing is, acceptable in the grand scheme of things. At the last show, before I went out to confront Kid Lykos, I walked around the dressing room and the place was empty, right? Back in my day, Everybody stuck around until the end. Everybody chipped in, and everybody was doing everything that they could to be the absolute best that they could. That same level of ambition is not there. So the reason why I came back to Progress is because Progress Wrestling is a company that made me love wrestling at a point in my life where I was falling out of love with it, right? Now, along the way, have developed such a fondness for Progress, such a fondness for the fans of Progress, and such a fondness for the very mission, the vision that Progress set forth. Now, I can't, in good faith, step back and look at the sheer mockery of what was once such a great company, such a great thriving scene, and see, it just fall apart. That would not sit right with me. When I ask myself this, if at the end of my life I could look back and say to myself, at what point would I wish I had done what? It is exactly what I am doing right now, which is stepping up and setting a higher standard for everybody else to step up to.
And keeping up with that higher standard that you think that you do want to set for Progress. The Super Strong Style 16 tournament this year, it is a stacked field. If you do walk out of that match with Lykos as the Progress World Champion, the Super Strong Style 16 winner will be waiting for you. Is there anyone in particular that stands out in this year's field that you'd like to lock up with in the coming months?
No, I don't care. I'm not at a point where I'm going to say, oh, I'd love to wrestle this guy. This guy's so good. No, send me whoever you want. I'm 18 years deep in this game, right? Like, I have wrestled some of my heroes and I have beaten some of my heroes, right? And it doesn't matter to me who steps up. If you want to step up, cool, come play. Come play. Let's get in the ring and let's have a play. But the fact is that everybody likes to think of themselves as being the greatest of whatever, or being the best wrestler in the country, or whatever stupid moniker that they like to call themselves. But then the same thing happens. I see this happen time and again, right? The card goes up on the dressing room wall. People go over and they like to look at, oh, what match have I got tonight? And they see their name drawn up against mine, and then suddenly their throat starts to get tight. Suddenly their palms start to sweat. Suddenly they start to worry. They start to think, oh gosh, I've got Haskins. Oh, it's time to step up. That's the thing, is I am a standard setter in this industry. I'm a standard setter in this country. And that is the problem, is that people for too long now, for the last few years, have disregarded me and disrespected me. And it has pissed me off to a point where I am about to step up in a way that you have never seen Mark Haskins step up before.
And with that, I have to ask, your last time you did challenge for the Progress World title, it was a while back now. It was back in, I believe it was 2018 against Walter, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, 6 years have gone by, long time in the wrestling world. What's changed for Mark Haskins in that time?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the big things that has changed is that Walter is no longer as fat as he was in that match. I was watching it back and thinking, damn, that's a completely different Walter to the Gunther we know now. And watching myself as well, I couldn't help but feel, I was like, damn, I'm so good at wrestling, right? Like, I was genuinely blown away. Sometimes I forget how genuinely great I am. But all I could say is that I am so far superior to that now. I used to have a giant ego, but I am so much better than that now. And the thing is that nowadays, this is the thing, is when we went into the pandemic, right, I look back at my career and I saw so many areas where I felt like I had let myself down, where I felt like I had let fear override, making a better decision. I was ruled by fear, and I had an unhealthy relationship with fear. Now, one thing that Kid Lykos did say recently, which I hate to agree with him on, but it was a fair point, is that he said that, during the pandemic and afterwards, I became irrelevant. And I would say, you know what? Fair point. I think I probably did. Because while everybody else was trying to remain relevant by doing stupid TikTok dances online and by doing stupid social media posts, I disappeared. And the reason why I disappeared is because I needed to go away and I needed to confront the demons that lived within me, right? I literally went into the pit of my soul and returned with the scalps of my demons, because I realized that I had an unhealthy relationship with fear. So I had to conquer fear. I had to put myself in positions and situations that made me feel greatly uncomfortable so I could then face it and adapt it. And that's exactly what happened. I was doing things that people would not even dream of doing, which is why I find it nothing but absolutely disrespectful for some little punk like Lykos to say that he would run through me. Bitch, he can't fucking run. Like, he doesn't even run. He can't even get up off the couch. Like, to say that you would run through me. Dude, let me put things into perspective for you. One day, I woke up and I said, you know what? I'm going to be a fucking beast today. So I threw on a 10-kilo weight sack and I ran over the Malvern Hills. I ran 8 kilometers there and I think 8 kilometers back, right? And every 5 minutes, I stopped to do 50 reps of an exercise and 10 burpees in the middle of a fucking storm. While everybody else is inside playing on TikTok or whatever the fuck it is, I'm out there busting my ass, literally physically destroying myself, doing things like going for a run at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? In the middle of a forest all by yourself. There's nobody else out there doing that. Right? I'm the only person out there. I can tell you this because when you're up a hill in the middle of the night, you don't see anybody. You don't see anybody walking. You see no one. And yet I'm the one out there wearing a weight vest, sprinting up a hill, right? So I realized now I had let myself down and I needed to keep things like my cardio up. I needed to come back an absolute beast. I needed to change what was going on in here. And over the last few years, I have done exactly that. I am more of a monster and more of a beast than I have ever been. And Lykos is going to find that out for himself on Super Strong Style 16.
And you've mentioned it time and again here already, fear is such a big part of wrestling in general. Do you think Lykos fears you?
Yes, he does. And that's why I find his words so hilarious, because he likes to stand up and he likes to give this big talk. And it's like, you know, when you see like a toddler trying to square up to you and being like, you took my dummy away. That's what like Lykos is. Do you know what I mean? Like, I could see the fear in his eyes. He's scared. He knows that I'm going to take what I want. And he knows that he can't do anything to stop me, which is why he likes to pretend, I don't need Nigel McGuinness. Well, yes, bitch. Yes, you do.
And just say, for example, with that field, there is obviously the fact that Kid Lykos 2 is in the tournament. And I have to ask, that would be a big match, given the fact if you do dethrone Kid Lykos on Sunday. Do you have anything to say on that possibility?
Kid Lykos 2 is an absolute wet blanket. I have less respect for him than I do for Kid Lykos, which is already at an all-time low. So no, I don't care. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this guy who's standing across the ring from me and pretending, you know, using his big boy voice, do you know what I'm saying? And his lackey, you think I'm going to fear Kid Lykos 2? You're trying to be a ripoff of an individual that I already actively dislike. So no, I don't care. If Kid Lykos 2 wins the tournament, then I would say that British wrestling is even more doomed than I already thought it was.
Well, one man in the tournament who's already a champion, who wants to be a double champion, he did fire a shot at Kid Lykos in an interview that I did with him recently, Type Mayfair's, and he wants to be a double champ. So I'm going to pose the same question that I asked Lykos. You win the Progress World title, is a TNT World title on the other shoulder something that you want?
For sure. I mean, I've already won the TNT Championship, but it would at least be good to prove that I could do it multiple times.
Yeah. So that I'd very much like to see that anyway. And just circling back to Nigel one last time, I do have to ask, as someone who worked in Ring of Honor for such an extended period like yourself, what was it like to work with Nigel and obviously in your mind be kind of almost betrayed by him?
It hurt, man, you know, because I remember years ago when I first got to TNA, there was only a handful of British guys there. There was Nick Aldis, there was Doug Williams, there was Nigel McGuinness and myself. So we used to hang out because it felt like we were, you know, sort of lads on tour. It felt like, you know, the Brit boys are here. Like, it made you feel a little bit more at home. So it hurt me that somebody like Nigel, somebody who I, you know, used to look up to at least, and, you know, used to respect, not anymore after watching his magic show, but you know, I definitely, you know, used to think very highly of him, and you know, it did upset me a little bit that he would choose Kid Lykos' side over mine. And I felt, you know, if Nigel wanted to step into the ring, if he, you know, felt like he had an issue with me and he wanted to take it out, cool, come talk to me. Let's go get in the ring and let's sort it. Let's sort it. Don't stab me in the back. Don't screw me over in a very important match to me. If you've got a problem, I'm all ears. So let's do something about it.
And you're a world travel star at this point in your career. You've been pretty much everywhere. You've been Japan, you've been the States, you've been all over. Where does the Super Strong Style tournament rank for you amongst the other major tournaments in the world of professional wrestling?
That's a good question, and I think that it is arguably the most important tournament in the UK. I've always felt that WXW 16 Karat Gold tournament was a big deal in Germany, and I got to compete on a handful of those across the years. And at some point, I was like, just wishing that a tournament of that caliber would come to the UK. And then sure enough, Super Strong Style 16 was born. And I believe the first one was in 2015. And I got to be a part of that. And I have seen across the years what Super Strong Style 16 has done for many young aspiring talents, what it has done for their careers, and also the caliber of matches that people put on. You know, I think that is genuinely one of the most amazing aspects of it, is that you have so many world-class wrestlers all under one roof, all fighting for, you know, the top spot and fighting for this opportunity. And that's when competition brings out the best in people, right? And it's, you know, in certain situations you can find it quite shocking that this guy beat this guy, you weren't expecting it, and it sets up an even more intriguing match in the next round. So for me personally, I'm as excited to watch the tournament this year and see what, you know, who's going to step up, who's going to do something, and who's going to be the one to lead the charge going forward to try and become number one contender for the championship that I'm about to win.
And is it something, and I know you said a couple of times now that you don't really care who your next challenger is, but with the field of Super Strong Style, it's a very split field of British wrestling talents and imports from the States and otherwise. Do you have a preference there? Do you want to face someone who's coming in, or do you want to face someone who's already a member of the British wrestling scene?
So over the last few years, I've definitely developed a greater sense of gratitude, and to look at that every situation has a positive and every situation has a negative. Now, what you have more of in your life is what you choose to focus on. Now, there is always going to be a reason to bitch and moan about something, and there's always going to be a reason to be grateful. If you are going through hell and you can just be grateful that your legs are working, then you are going to stand such a better chance of having a greater life than you do if all you do is piss and bitch and moan. And that's the thing, is that a lot of people, I think that in this tournament, you know, people will say, oh, I want to wrestle this guy, I want to wrestle that guy. It genuinely doesn't bother me. You know, I will take on the best of this new generation and I will beat them all. I will take on anybody who comes from abroad and I will send them back to wherever they came from with, you know, the message, go and tell everyone about me. Tell the world that you came to the UK and you were denied by Mark fucking Haskins.
And you've been very, let's say, aggressive with most of the British wrestling scene in general. But is there anyone that stands out to you now that, like, just someone who you can see is going to be someone that could even be a threat to you in a couple of years? It's a loaded question, I know. But
hey, sorry, go on. So, okay, so is there anybody who I think that within the next couple of years is going to really step up? You know what? Leon Slater, I think, is incredible, right? Like, I first saw him in January 2022. I was up at North Wrestling. He was in a dark match there, right? The next time I saw him, he was already taking off. He's at such a young age that I'm, you know, genuinely impressed by how good he is at such a young age. And I think that it's a real testament to that as the scene develops and as people get better, it becomes a lot quicker and easier to be better when you're surrounded by such great talent. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I feel that guys like myself, you know, we were coming through a broken scene. Like, I debuted in 2006. Not the pandemic, the recession happened in 2008, which pretty much killed the scene off. It felt like there wasn't anywhere near as bigger houses at that point. There wasn't as many shows. I remember peeking through the curtain at a show and thinking, there's 300 people here. That's like WrestleMania. Do you know what I mean? And then, you now there's 300 people in the crowd and you're like, damn, it's a quiet night. Do you know what I mean? Because of what happened over the time. Things changed. People stepped up. I feel like the guys who came through during the same period that I came through, we really had to find our feet. We had to go abroad and we had to gain knowledge from other territories. That territory now exists here in the UK. So it's a lot easier for people to gain that knowledge, gain that exposure, that experience, because it's right on their doorstep. So within the next few years, I think that there's such a great potential of talents being better than arguably they ever have been in this country, because you're already stood on the shoulders of giants, right? But the issues that I see is that it very much feels like it's a certain privileged mindset, right? Because when you don't have something, I feel that there are those that drop away and think, oh well, I don't have it, I'm not going to get it, and there's those who then go and seek it, right? You're going to move out of a place of an uncomfortable situation. You're going to move out of a dark place quicker than you are being in a comfortable place, right? So these guys now, things are actually quite comfortable. Things are doing all right, but they don't necessarily have that ambitious drive to really step up and say, okay, we've now got to do something. We've now got to go here. We've got to keep pushing the envelope, and we've got to keep pushing the standard up and up. And that is what I am here to do, right? During COVID, I had a lot of deep thoughts, a lot of self-reflection. I look back at my time and what it is that I would want to do going forward, right? I am very aware now, 18 years deep into this game. I'm 35. I turn 36 next month, right? I am, an absolute realist that the majority of my career is probably behind me. I don't see myself going another 18 years in this gig, which means that I need to make the most out of whatever it is that I have left in front of me. And the issue with wrestling is that you never know how much further it is that you have left. Look at Bad Bones the other day, for example, right? He was saying he was going to retire in September, and then he, a few days after his 40th birthday, he sadly passed away. Do you know what I mean? Like you can only ever be grateful for the moment that you have now and make the most out of the opportunity that is in front of you. And that is what I want this generation to do, is I want them to step up and do something. I want them to be more ambitious, and I want them to go that extra mile, because when you take things for granted, at some point the years add up and you look back at yourself and you realize that you didn't make the most of the opportunities while you had them. You have to make the most out of the opportunity of a lifetime during the lifetime of the opportunity.
And you did mention Bad Bones there, and I do want to just for a second, just obviously someone who also reminded a lot of people of just when I was short, and it meant so much to the British wrestling scene, was Mad Kurt. And I'm just wondering if throughout your time on the British wrestling scene, if you have a positive memory that you'd like to share about Kurt at this time, like.
Mad Kurt, whenever I saw him on a show, it was a reminder to enjoy myself a little bit more. I never told him that, and I wish I had, because whenever I saw him, it made me smile. And I'd seen him go from being a kid who was just trying to be a good wrestler to then being a kid who was actually, I think, very innovative. There was a certain wit to what it was that he did. And I really admired that, and I never told him that, and I wish I had, because I think that it's only in hindsight that you look back and think, I wish I told this person that, or I wish that person had known that if they were going through something that they could have reached out. And, you never want to see people fall. You don't want to see, or even think that people were necessarily in a dark place and that they were alone. So I'll say this now. So for whoever's watching, look, if you're ever at a dark place, I've been there. Like when I was in Japan years ago, I wanted to kill myself. I was stood on the roof of the building I was staying in, and the only reason I didn't jump was because I remembered the words that my mum had told me, which was, if you're ever at that point, just remember there is always another way. Right. And I talked myself away. I went and like a year later met the most beautiful, incredible woman in the world. Within 6 months of that, we were pregnant with our first son, Jack. And now she is the absolute beautiful, gorgeous psychopath that I call my wife. So, there's always a point where you're going to think, I don't see myself getting out of this. But the night is darkest when it's closest to the dawn, so if you are going through some stuff like that, know that that doesn't have to be the way, that there is always a chance for you to change things. There's always a chance for you to do something else. So if anyone is ever at like a really dark point and, you know, is contemplating doing something that's irreversible, please don't do it. You know, reach out to somebody, reach out to me. I will get back to you. Like, I promise you, you know? So, yeah, like I think that Madka, it was sad that was what ended up happening. And I think it's sad as well, because, you know, sometimes the people who, it's like the people who try to make others laugh the most, it's coming from a place because they're not smiling inside. And I just, you know, it's heartbreaking. I wish I could have made him smile.
Very poignant words from Mark Haskins there, guys. Switching gears back to the in-ring side of things, a promotion that you have found yourself in time and time again over here in Ireland is OTT. You were the OTT World Champion for a year. You did end up losing it to Omari. Last time you were here was the 8th anniversary show last, or was it 9th anniversary? I can't remember. But October last year. Is there plans to come back to OTT in the near future?
You'll have to ask them. I was the most dominant champion in their history, and then I got the Undertaker gig where I show up once a year, and then just, you know, yeah, go and speak to them. I don't know. Come back. I love coming to Ireland. It's great. But no, I will be back in Ireland soon. So I'm wrestling for RCW in Cork. Yes. So it's a couple of hours away from Dublin, but hell of a show. I was there back in, I think it was February. It's such a unique feel to the venue. It's such a unique feel. And there was that aspect of like that grassroots era of progress that it reminded me of. It was you know, just wrestling fans just rammed into this dingy little hall. It's boiling hot because everybody's just sweating their ass off, right? But everybody's there because they love it. Everyone's there because they're passionate, and everybody's there because they want to be there and they want to see an incredible night of entertainment. And that's exactly what RCW gives. And
circling back to Ring of Honor for a minute, you obviously, as someone who was a big part of the last era of Ring of Honor before Tony Khan kind of bought the company, how do you feel about Ring of Honor's product in 2024 as an outsider looking in?
I think that it's a very cool take on Ring of Honor. You know, from what I've seen, I think that it's you know, it definitely gets me excited. I'm just gutted that things ended, especially with my relationship with it, the way that it did, because they took so good care of us during COVID. You know, they didn't release us; they kept us on board. They kept, you know, paying us, and then that was one of the biggest driving forces for me. Was I wanted to be able to come back and be able to repay them in any way that I could. It was a huge motivation for me to be a greater asset by the time that I could get back to America than the time that they last saw me, because I was so grateful for the care that they had given towards all of us. So the fact that things ended the way that they did, you know, I'm sad, but what can you do? Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of gutted that they didn't have another investor, just from the sole point that I think that Ring of Honor was especially sort of around January, February time, 2020, there was such this vibe that we're going to step up. We're going to take on the world. We're going to do this, right? So it felt like there could have been another big promotion fighting in that competition between all the big promotions, right? Whereas it's great that Tony Khan bought it, but I do feel that then it kind of takes a second place to AEW rather than stepping up and being another contender as such.
And you haven't been really to the States for many matches since Ring of Honor, if at all, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember off the top of my head, but is that something that you want to explore again in the future, or are you happy where you are now in the British wrestling scene? Watch this space. That's all I need to know about that then. God, you have to catch me off guard with that one completely. And I have to poke a little. Is that to do with Defy by any chance? To do with what? Defy? Oh, sorry, I'm a little hard of hearing. Well, you know, who knows? Defy and Progress have a working relationship. And as I am about to become the Progress World Champion, I think that it would only be fitting that I, honor the commitments of being a true champion and defending that championship wherever it may take me. Good to hear. Good to hear. And I did mention your last title challenge for the Progress World title, but your last title reign was in 2016. You have won it before. Some people might not remember that. I certainly do. It wasn't a long reign. We'll say that. Do you feel that there's unfinished business there?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know how long I spent chasing the championship to hold for a month? You know what I mean? Like, mate. I look back at that period of my life and I'm just so gutted things happened the way they did, because it got to the end of that year and, I was having issues with my shoulder. I had tingling all down my arm. I was getting headaches before I wrestled. And I thought I was just dehydrated. I thought, so I was drinking so much water, and then I ended up being bloated as well as having headaches. And it turned out that I had some issues with my neck. Those issues got blown completely out of proportion and were made to seem far worse than they actually were. I have been cleared by multiple physios that all said, nope, you're good to go. And, it was already too late. The damage had been done. I thought to myself, you know what, I've got to give up the championship, because I at that point in time, I couldn't guarantee that it was one way or the other, and I felt like Progress needed a fighting champion. So I felt like I was doing the right thing. I gave up that championship, short-lived reign, and then everybody just seemed to give me flack for it, saying, oh, well, you gave the championship up. It's like, yes, because I was doing the right thing. Do you know what I mean? So when I win the championship this time, I have learned from my mistakes, and I can tell you, my legs could have fallen off. I might never be able to wrestle again, and I will not relinquish that championship, because no matter what, I am not giving it up again. You can all come and fight over my dead body as I clutch hold of the championship title.
Completely fair. And kind of circling back a little to OTT, kind of in a way, you do have a match coming up next month with the OTT World Champion, Trent Seven. And I do want to ask you a little bit about that one and what comes after that.
Do I have to wrestle Trent?
That how you're feeling about it?
Yeah, I'm like, why are we even doing this? It's like, I don't know, it'd be like putting a pig in a pen with a lion and saying like, oh, let's see who wins. It's like, it's pretty damn obvious who's going to win. Do we even have to do this? Give me someone else, or just pay me and we don't even have to show up. It would save me a lot of effort. I also have to say as well, my wife genuinely hates him. So every time that I even have to bring it up or even say, we're wrestling Trent, I should probably make it look like I'm preparing for this. I have to deal with a barrage that goes on for far too long of just unpleasantries towards him. And I'll tell you exactly why this has all happened. Is that years ago, we were in Ireland, we were on a tour bus. We were playing a game called Mafia. Now, it's a game of deception where you have to convince people. The mafia has to basically hide and convince that they're villagers, but they get to vote off a villager each round, which nobody realizes. I'm not going to sit here and explain the entire game, but it's a game of deception, right? Now, there are certain roles within the game, and one of the roles is that of the sheriff. Now, there was a situation occurred where my wife, the lovely psychotic Vicky Haskins, was the genuine sheriff. However, Trent told everyone that he was the sheriff, and everybody chose to believe Trent over Vic and thought she was the mafia and voted her off. And since then, there has just been this pure animosity towards him, just this genuine bitterness. And I'm like, babe, it's just a game. Don't worry about it. She's like, no, I am the sheriff. So the way that we're looking at this is that this match is going to be, if I have to wrestle Trent, then fine, but he is going to utter the words, you are the sheriff. Just so Vic can have closure on this incident that has scarred her so greatly.
And as we're winding down, I have a topic that I do want to talk to you about. Obviously, NXT Europe is kind of looming over the British wrestling scene, the European scene in general. Obviously, the same way that NXT... Sorry?
Is it?
It feels like it is, yeah. Similar way that NXT UK did. Just want to get your opinion on that and NXT UK, how it affected the British wrestling scene and so on.
Well, up until you said it, I didn't know that it was even a thing. So I guess my initial response would be, that sounds quite exciting. Yeah, I mean, the most bizarre thing about all of this for me is that I remember hearing about these ideas in 2007. That was when it was first talked about. It has been a vision for many, many years, and it feels like it was only when, with the intervention of ITV coming along and creating the wrestling show that they did back in, I believe it was 2016, that it really forced WWE to do something about it, because they saw, oh, you know, this is a market that's blowing up. Companies like Progress, like ICW, like OTT, I believe were putting a dent in WWE's ticket sales in this country. So they wanted to clamp down, and they wanted to, you know, make sure that it was a country that they got the best out of. So I mean, it's one of these things, you hear rumors all the time where people say, oh, this is possibly going to happen. It's like, yeah, but, you know, this is always possibly been going to happen. Are they actually going to do something about it or not? And I think that a lot of the time, it's only really when a competitor comes along that they then choose, okay, we've got to do something about it now, because it forces their hand. I mean, it would be great if NXT Europe or UK happened, because I believe that it opens up opportunities for guys to get out there, to make names for themselves in their own countries, in their own region. You know, I think that it's, especially with my time with Ring of Honor, I was flying out to America the day before the show, and then, you know, doing 2 shows and then flying back the day after, and that's exhausting. You know, the thought of traveling an hour down the road and being you know, on TV or being in like a studio sounds so much better than you know, flying, you know, catching 3 flights across, you know, the globe. And yeah, I think that if it goes ahead, then it would be a great thing to happen, and I hope that it genuinely does, because I think that, you know, the more opportunities that open up for people, for young aspiring wrestlers, you know, the better the business is going to be. It's going to allow people to make names for themselves. It's going to allow WWE to make more stars. It's going to allow, you know, I think it's a great thing for everybody, as long as they can get it to work.
Yeah. And one final question for you. As we head into the second half of 2024, obviously, if you win this Sunday, you're going to be heading into it as the Progress World Champion. But is there any broader goals for you in the second half of 2024 that you want to achieve this year?
I just want to do better, and I want people to do better. I want to be able to motivate and influence people to step up their game and to do better as well, right? Like I said, I'm at a point in my career where I'm almost at this, like, fuck it, let's find out kind of phase. And that's dangerous, because, you know, you end up taking some risks which are stupider than others, that's for sure. But I'm also thinking, well, you know what, at this point in my career, I'm just kind of in it to, what's the most entertaining stories that I can write in an autobiography one day. Yeah. So, you know, yeah, we'll see. But no, I want to genuinely put better into the world, you know, like like I said, I'm 35 years old. You know, I feel like I'm in the absolute peak condition of my life. You know, the best I've ever felt. I feel like I've got the best head on my shoulders I ever have done, and I've got this insatiable drive to just keep striving forward. You know, and I think that whether that's in wrestling, that's great. You know, if there's, you know, something else that comes along that I want to go and explore, then hell, I'll do that. You know, there's a lot of challenges that I've put off because I've always thought, oh, I would like to, you know, keep gearing up for wrestling. And I think I've reached a point where I'm like, you know what, like, you know, being the athletic phase of my life is definitely in its later years. So I would like to be able to do some things while I still have the chance to recover a lot quicker from them than if it was 10 years down the line. You know, I'd love to run the 3 peaks in the UK. I want to, you know, enter a Spartan race. You know, I want to, you know, do some things like that away from wrestling that is going to teach me some things about life. Because I think that if you stay in one area for too long, you can become stagnant. You know, if you outgrow your surroundings, and it's time to, you know, go and sit at a different table where you're going to learn more from other people. And that's it, man. Is like, I just genuinely want to be the best version of myself, and I want to be able to give the best version of myself to this game while I still have some years left doing it.
And thank you very much for this interview, Mark. You've been an absolute pleasure to chat with. Obviously, you've got Super Strong Style this weekend. You've got that match with Kid Lykos on Sunday. You've got that match with Trent Seven next month. Do you have any other bookings that you want to tell people about?
I have lots, and I've completely forgotten what all of them are because that's how old I am now. You know, it's very forgetful. I know I've got a stacked June and stacked July coming up. It's it's a problem trying to remember what's been announced and what hasn't. So I don't want to, you know, say something and be like, "Hey, I'm doing this," and then I'm like, "Oh, that you were a surprise." I'm like, "Oh no," do you know? So all I can hope is that nobody watches your show, and that if I do let anything out I shouldn't have done, that it doesn't come back to bite me in the ass. But no, so we are doing Burning Heart Pro Wrestling in June. Very excited about that because it's a lot of the guys from my generation putting on what I can only assume are going to be some of the most badass shows in the UK. We haven't done the Liverpool Olympia in a long time. It's a great venue. We're going to be back in Swansea. We're going to be in Wolverhampton. I think that it's going to be some stacked shows. And seeing the people who have been retweeting and pointing fingers at this thing, I think that Burning Heart Pro Wrestling definitely has a real chance of stepping up and being a serious contender here in the UK. We're back in Cork for RCW in the middle of next month as well. And after this weekend, I have no future bookings with Progress Wrestling, which is why it's even more important that I win the Progress Wrestling Championship to force them to bring me back. So we'll see how it goes and hope that it's just the fact that they've forgotten to ask me rather than the fact that they're giving me the boot, but we will see. So we'll see that. And in July, who knows where I'm going to be.
And once again, guys, if you want to follow Mark, you can find him on X, formerly Twitter, at This Is Haskins. And guys, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm probably going to have more Progress talent ahead of Super Strong Style 16. I'm sure they're going to have a lot to say about what Mark had to say about them. And guys, see you in the next one.